Typically, my focus is for supporting communities of faith. I get to travel around New York, New Jersey, Puerto Rico, and the U.S. Virgin Islands, but I also get the privilege of working with nonprofits and community organizations like City Island Rising. So I'm happy to be here, and I'm going to be talking a little bit about climate change and how FEMA is currently working to address climate change and what we're looking for in the future in terms of anticipated climate change projections. But I'm also joined by Kat, and wanted to allow you to introduce yourself to me too.
Okay, sure. Hi everybody, my name is Kat, and similar to Race, I used to be a FEMA reservist. I was deployed to Puerto Rico for Hurricane Maria for 2 years. After that, Oregon wildfires for I think 9 months, 6 to 9 months. And then after that, COVID response. And after that, I'm at Department of Health. And I'm a research scientist. I work with epidemiologists who study climate change and the effects on health. So happy to be here. Nice to meet you all.
Great. And I also just want to thank John for being such a great champion for community convening. Echoing what someone else said. I wish there were advocates like you in communities across the country, because that's you're the reason why we're here. And thank you for that partnership.
Absolutely, thank you.
Yeah. All right. So I just wanted to start by getting an understanding of where we were in terms of climate change, and I wanted to ask all of you, what types of climate change conversations or planning, if any, have occurred here in City Island? Is anybody aware? Yeah.
I mean, there are some things going on. We have the City Island Oyster Reef project, cleaning the waters. John spearheaded, like he said before, the flooding that goes on City Island, and that's about all.
And the
the Hudson River
River
project.
The Hudson restoration project, which is pollution.
Yeah.
That's just a bay.
Anything else anyone's aware of? Okay. Has there been any recent long-term planning efforts in City Island, like planning out for 2040, 2050, what City Island may look like?
No.
Okay.
No.
Well, we've got that.
City of Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there's been talks about development and planning, but it hasn't been into emergency response.
That's not.
No, not that.
Well, you're talking no, but it's more about climate change science.
Yeah.
That would be one of those would be the Oyster Reef.
Okay.
Because that's looking for the into the future.
Yeah.
Keeping our waters clean and secure.
Yeah.
And there's grants that are coming to City Island for these projects, and the school is involved.
Okay.
So 75 is becoming an environmental school.
Okay.
Cool.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
And we have a good relationship with the Waterfront Alliance.
Okay.
And I know they're involved in some of the education. You actually reminded me, they're involved in some of the educational planning. Ms. Heil, who's the science teacher there, she was at some conference I was at down in November. So they're bringing in educational aspects through that. And I think the Billion Oyster Project is planning to do something on the island, and that'll probably be in conjunction with City Island Oyster Project, I'm sure. So.
Okay.
Other partnerships.
That's the only thing that I know that is science-based.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That's great to know. Thank you for sharing that with me.
After Sandy, we had something with the governor's office. I remember that. I was on that committee, and they produced a report, and they were supposed to look into a coastal edge protection measure for City Island. Okay. But it became, one, it was expensive, and City Island and Country Club were supposed to be prioritized, and two, it was on which street end could they do it on, and that became a very hot potato issue. So in the end, I think they didn't move forward with it.
Yeah, and we had a meeting where somebody came from the city about the apartments and the flooding.
Yeah.
Would that fall into this?
Yeah, I guess so, right? Yeah, I guess so.
Okay.
Did something happen on Ditmar Street?
So there was flooding last week, and the flood sensors picked up that it was 36 inches, which is kind of the most severe, like it caps at 36 inches. Okay. So it's probably worse than 36 inches. And Pix 11 sent a news crew out. I can send you the media report.
Sure, yeah, I'd love to look
And they interviewed Orion, is that his name? Orion from the Oyster Project.
Yes, right.
He formerly of the Oyster Project. He was there. He was good. Him and his wife Katie. They were good.
Yeah.
Okay.
The reason I brought it up was because that is a well-known flooding
Absolutely.
spot.
Yeah, because it's the
Yeah,
lowest
and
point.
right next to the yacht club.
It's the
Okay.
lowest,
But
one of the
who
lowest
fixed
points.
that
One of the
house
lowest points,
up
okay.
before anything was done?
Yeah, I speak to him. I don't want to give his name, but I speak to him. But he's very willing, and he agrees something needs to be done. And he has cameras, so he has all the flooding too.
Okay.
And those are the conversations we're trying to have with the deputy mayor's office now.
Okay.
But
And
he's second house in, isn't he?
he's
From
the first
water?
house in.
Oh my God.
He was the first. He's the first house in. He's the first house in the corner there.
Yeah.
And they're starting to renovate some of those homes. There was one home that was
Right.
gone for 30 years, something like that.
Right.
And now
beautiful.
they're rebuilding. Yeah, they're doing a good job with it. And then there's another person down there who was she's the one with the sign, and I'm paraphrasing the sign, and I'm just quoting the sign, but it's something like, no pit bulls, but I forgot what it is. There's something threatening, and then invoking Italian ancestry. So it's very funny that the sign says, yeah.
That's great. Patrick.
Yeah, I was just wanted to say we have other alliances or collaborations
Okay.
with like Riverkeeper, which is the Hudson River. This is the Hutchinson River, and Save the Sound and Bronx
That's
River
right.
Alliance. So we've got a lot of connections working with those three big organizations as well.
Okay.
So, and they're all interested in this, very much interested in this as well. Especially Riverkeeper. That's huge.
Are you familiar with any types of projects that they're pursuing?
Riverkeeper has got a lot of things related to the Hudson River, obviously, going all the way up north. So they've got a lot of projects working on. And Save the Sound, we're talking about Long Island Sound. That's a huge
they're great.
project that they've got
Okay.
going on as well.
And there's money last year appropriated in the budget they're going to be doing in the next year a Hutchinson River watershed plan. They're doing the one for Westchester right now, but $400,000 going to the Bronx watershed plan. So we can finally have a plan to clean up the Hutch in our area, because as everyone knows, when they do the report cards, thank you, because everyone here starts talking and brings up better ideas. When they do the water quality of the whole Long Island Sound, the Western Narrows where we are is always an F.
Okay.
And you look at it, you go back 10 years and Save the Sound started 15 years now. Every year it changes. For other areas, it went from like C to B, B minus to A, and we just stay as an F. So this is a very critical part. And then on top of that, as a bunch of us have been involved with, the sewerage that creeped out of Mount Vernon because they had poor sewer lines, that is being addressed. That's through the state. I think the governor and the mayor in Mount Vernon, they took that on. But that had been a problem for years.
They were dumping.
They were literally dumping more sewerage into the Hutch.
Well, they still are, right?
Yeah.
It isn't solved yet.
Well, it's being
solved
worked on, but you're right. It's not solved.
Right.
So.
And if one of our book club colleagues were here, she'd tell you about Orchard Beach, and they're cutting down huge number of trees, which could have impact on the on the environment here. So, and who's it's like you can't. Who can you talk to about that? It's almost like they're doing it.
And it doesn't directly affect us. This is the Bronx River. It's further over, but I don't know if you heard, there was like an oil spill in the Bronx River.
I did hear that.
1,000.
Con Ed.
When was that?
Like this morning or yesterday.
Really?
Within the last week, there's been a bad problem in Con Ed. Seals have
Oil
some-
spill, like 1,000 gallons of oil.
In the Bronx River?
Yeah,
Oh, no.
up in Valhalla, there was some kind of accident.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, there's certainly a lot going on.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that with me. So, I also wanted to just poll all of you and ask, what type of things have you heard about climate change projections, and what may you have learned since climate change has become like a hot topic of discussion over the past couple of decades. Anything that you currently think about climate change?
Rise of the seas.
So sea level rise, okay.
Yes, and at one point there was this possibility that the Army Corps of Engineers was building a wall.
The seawall?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and how that would impact City Island.
Okay.
And I went to a conference with AOC maybe 2 years ago, and they had maps, and City Island was bright red, danger zone.
Yeah.
Big danger, and nobody's talking about it in the city. It's like where we don't exist here.
Or there was a time when they hadn't even told us.
Right.
We found out by
Right, by accident,
Yeah.
right.
And back in 2013, 2014, when, the late Commissioner Esposito, who was in charge of OEM, he had a staff member who would frequently call some of us because, as Lois said, on the map, we were like a level 1 evacuation area, all red, and there's one way in and one way off. And
How do you get off this island?
she said it was keeping them all up at night because they were considering what happens in another Sandy. This was post-Sandy. There was a lot of concern about City Island. And, nothing really has come to, we've got the flood sensors, we've got the oyster people doing a lot of work. I'm not trying to disparage the people doing work, but there's been no concrete planning, and that's why we wanted to do this work with you guys. Or at least start it.
Absolutely love it.
Well, this is great. I'm hopeful that this can be the start of a longer conversation where we can pull in some of the local emergency management organizations to talk about some of the concerns that you've shared today. But I thank you for your interest in climate change. Sea level rise is certainly a correlation to what we'll be talking about today. Are there other types of concerns that you've heard about related to climate change beyond sea level rise?
Well, the temperature changing.
Okay.
The temperature changing, and I notice it. Just how much more rain we get certain times of year than we used to get.
Okay.
When it used to be drier, and a different temperature sort of arcs time. So I'm more just aware of it experientially than from any source of scientific information.
Yeah.
The water getting warmer, affecting marine life.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely.
And there's noticeable beach erosion.
Okay.
I mean, I've lived here all my life, so.
Yeah. Okay.
Flash flooding's way
Flash
more
flooding.
severe now.
Yep. Flooding is certainly a correlation. Any other types of disaster hazard risk that you've associated with climate change?
Someone did a survey of the whole city, and there were heat islands, areas where there's not enough tree and we're fortunate a lot of the blocks do have tree line blocks, but we have a lot of just tar parking lots, and as a result that really traps heat. So as a result, in some areas, our temperature is a lot hotter than there are in other parts of the city.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the other thing I've noticed experientially, like this past summer, we in the past few years, the first time we're getting fire alerts in this part of the country. We're on the coast. We never had fire alerts before, and now we're getting these alerts, and we had the wildfire smoke coming in from Canada. So, so those kinds of things are definitely
Canadian wildfire. Thank you for remembering that. That's critical.
Absolutely.
That's true.
I think all of those hazards are spot on and are the ones that FEMA has top of mind for what we're preparing for and where we're investing our mitigation funding. So what I wanted to review today with you is a bit of what's going on with the climate. So it will be a bit of a climate sort of science focused presentation that we'll also hear about some of the public health impacts and further the discussion of what you see City Island doing and what role you think City Island Rising can take in advocating for the forthcoming climate change impacts. So I'll dive into some of the introductory slides that I have, but I'm sure everyone's heard of global warming and climate change. The two are a bit different, right? So global warming refers to that rapid increase in the Earth's average surface temperature over the past century, which is primarily due to the release of greenhouse gases. So CO2 being emitted through anthropogenic man-made causes. Climate change started to really pick up. The discussion really started to pick up when we saw this observed trend in global temperatures. And so this graph goes back to 1880, where you can see the fluctuation of global temperatures. And we were in a relatively cool period here, but then everything started to pick up pretty on a trend line here in like the 1960s. And you see variations year by year, up, down, but if you plot it out and look at it over time, there's a clear trend that the Earth is getting warmer. And this is really what I think signaled a lot of interest and people sounding the alarm that we need to think about this and understand One, can we do anything to lower these temperatures? And if not, what does this mean for how we prepare for the associated impacts? So I realize this might be a hard slide to read, but I really think that this summarizes, just in one image, some of the major impacts that we're seeing. So I'll try to like verbally explain what's going on here. This map shows that certain parts of our country are experiencing changes in temperature to different degrees. So there is a little bit of variation here in New York in that dark red, which shows about 3 degrees of average annual temperature change. But you also see that this is really pronounced in the western part of the country, Alaska as well. This corresponds with an increase in the number of heat waves that we've seen. This, I think, in my opinion, is one of the biggest concerns that I have related to climate change, and that's the impact of extreme heat and what that means for people that are particularly vulnerable to extreme heat, the elderly, the very young, and also in neighborhoods that may lack air conditioning. There are very real pockets around the city where the percentage of apartments or households lack air conditioning. And I'm concerned about what that may mean for strain on the power grid, power failure, and an increased number of deaths or heat strokes that result from perceived increase in extreme heat. I heard precipitation. So we're also observing and expect, particularly in New York, that there will be increased amount of precipitation, more frequently, more intense downpours. And what does that mean for stormwater flooding? I think here in City Island, I've heard a few things related to stormwater management, and knowing that climate change suggests that we're going to have more events like that. What does that mean? It may warrant closer focus, more investment, more attention to prepare for that. There's also some concerns about snowpack, primarily in the west, so there is a relation to the amount of snow that's falling and what that means for the snowpack on the top of mountains, which feed into reservoirs and aquifers that provide drinking water and potable water in the western U.S. Very real drought considerations as well. Curious what that means for our food supply in the country. If there are conditions that limit farmers' ability to for food production, what does that mean for consumers down the road? I heard sea level rise. I have some maps that we'll look at for sea level rise as well, but there's definitely an observable trend. It's very small, but over time, that can make a big difference. And it's leading to sea level erosion and things like that. Another thing that I didn't hear related to the warming water is ocean acidity. So I work also in Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands, and a lot of the tourism is driven by, like scuba diving and snorkeling and things like that. So a lot of my friends that I work with in the U.S. Virgin Islands are concerned about what that means for the economy there. It's so reliant on that. What does that mean for the coral reefs? What does that mean for the fishing industry? Because it harms the life, the marine life there.
Can I just ask you, you say the U.S. sea level, you say is small. What are those units in? If they're inches, that's huge.
The units are in inches. Yes, the units are in inches, going from 0 to 10, from 1920 to 2020.
And you say that's small?
Well, yeah, I agree. I guess it's a matter of perspective.
That's why I asked you with millimeters, because obviously not.
That seemed like a lot, 10 inches.
Yeah. I agree with you. It would just, I think,
That looks huge.
Yeah.
All right.
So, at FEMA, we're concerned about this because we're the federal agency that deals with mobilizing federal resources and supporting our state and local governments with disasters. Similar to some trends related to climate change, we've also observed a dramatic increase in the number of disasters globally. So you'll see that we're seeing a lot more floods, which are indicated by the blue bar going over time, just increasing. Extreme weather patterns from this green bar. drought, extreme temperature. Earthquakes appear relatively stable. Wildfires, volcanic activity, mass movement. So this would be related to weather. But there's an observable trend and an increased number of disasters that are occurring around the globe. I think that this is sort of exacerbated by the increase in population and development in vulnerable areas, but it's also attributed to climate change and an increased number of hurricanes, stronger storms, more flooding, more wildfires, and so those two things are compounding to resulting in more disasters globally, but also here in the U.S.
You think it's related to the earthquake we had 3 days ago, 4.8 in New Jersey? Is that climate change related or just sporadic? 100 years ago, we never had one like that.
Yeah, my personal opinion is it's probably unlikely, but I'd be curious to look at forthcoming geological reports about that. I have seen some connections to climate change and earthquakes, primarily through fracking, but sort of like generic earthquakes. I think the science is still out there about the correlation to climate change. Sea level rise. There's been a lot of interesting studies about which areas of the country are most vulnerable to sea level rise, and you'll see in this map that certain parts of the country are more vulnerable. Areas in green are averaging 0 to 3 millimeters per year, and then going with the warmer colors, you're getting all the way up to above 9 millimeters per year. So areas like southeastern Louisiana, encroaching upon New Orleans, very high risk for the impacts of sea level rise. Area of Houston, Texas, this whole area is very vulnerable. You're also talking about areas like Miami, some areas here in Maryland, around Washington D.C., and also here in New York. There are pockets of the coast that are experiencing 3 to 6 millimeters of sea level rise per year, and I think while that may sound little, over time, I think that certainly can make a big impact on erosion. It can exacerbate coastal flooding. It can have impacts on stormwater infrastructure. So not something to be dismissed, even though it appears small. These are some general statistics that state that sea level has been rising consistently over the past century. And why has it been rising? Part of the reason is that the ice caps are melting, and there's additional water going into the ocean, which is supporting the increase of the sea level rising. So thermal expansion caused by the warming of the ocean and increased melting of land-based ice, which is the primary cause. But as I mentioned, and what this map is showing, the sea level change at specific locations is different based on things like subsidence. Certain areas of the country are sinking slowly, and that has an impact on that sea level rise locally. Erosion, which I think I heard here. There are certain types of vegetation that support the integrity of the coastline. So when that erodes, sea level can rise a bit higher. Changes in regional ocean currents and this effect called post-glacial rebound, which I won't discuss.
We're talking about ocean currents, so what is the story behind that huge current that goes up the east coast of the U.S. and across to the north? I forget the name of it now, but that supposedly is slowing down as well. Whether that's related to this issue or not.
Yeah.
Is it like the one on the west coast, the El Nino effect?
No.
Okay, I just asked.
This one that comes from south to north.
Okay.
It's related to shipping.
From west coast of Africa?
What?
Is it the same one that comes from the west coast of Africa? And like that's where hurricanes
it sweeps up the east coast of the U.S. and it goes, and it's a shipping issue, because and then it comes up to the north. Comes around, it ends in Europe actually. It's a big, I forget, I used to remember the name of that current, but I heard that that's slowing down, which is a huge issue,
Yeah.
for many different reasons.
Yeah.
And is that related to what you're talking about too?
I wouldn't be surprised. I'm not familiar enough to say one way or another, but yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if it was. So I think, you know, sea level rise is of course a very serious issue. At FEMA, we also deal with a lot of hurricanes, and we deal with a lot of, you know, the associated wind damage that hurricanes bring, and the storm surge, which impacts coastal communities. The climate change science is not, you know, good in terms of what that means for hurricanes over the next several decades. Last week, you may have seen in the news that this year we're anticipating one of the strongest and most active hurricane seasons in the past several decades. And so I'm concerned about that. Hey, welcome.
Hello.
Hey, welcome everyone. Feel free to grab a seat. We're just reviewing some of the climate change science, and we're talking a little bit about different hazards and what that means for climate change.
One of the hazards is traffic coming in.
So, you know, looking more specifically at what the science suggests, hurricanes are going to likely have higher wind speeds on average in the forthcoming decades. There's going to be more rain that the hurricanes bring, which results in worsened flooding. I know that it's relatively rare that we have a hurricane or a tropical storm that, you know, hits this part of the country, but the science would suggest that, you know, if we have more frequent hurricanes, the likelihood and probability of another storm, you know, hitting this area is increased. The tracks. So the track that a hurricane takes can also be influenced by changing weather patterns, the warming of the ocean. What the Climate Change Association suggests is that there could be slower storms. So storms that kind of hang out, or, you know, if you remember Hurricane Harvey in 2017, it was a slow-moving storm that came up around Corpus Christi, Texas, went back out into the Gulf of Mexico, then came over Houston and hung out over Houston for about 24 hours, and just dropped so much rain and caused massive flooding. It was this very slow-moving storm. That's what the science suggests, that we could have slower storms that you know, are influenced by some of the projected weather patterns. The storms could be stronger. They could intensify into storms more rapidly because of the conditions. And some of the formation science is a little bit unclear, but, you know, the waters are anticipated to be warmer, which is, you know, good ingredients for you know, stronger, more frequent hurricanes. So that's what the correlation is between climate change, hurricanes, and some of the associated storm surge. So, not thinking about hurricanes, I mentioned previously that the science does suggest that we're going to have more frequent precipitation events, and the ones that we do get are going to be stronger. There's variations in the projections across the country. You know, we are in the area that is projected to get a lot more rain events. We don't necessarily need to, you know, look into this, but that's what all of the modeling suggests is going to be true for City Island, New York City. And what does that mean for how we prepare? What does that mean for investments in, you know, stormwater infrastructure? I think it certainly you know, raises those questions. But as I mentioned, you know, one of the things that I'm most concerned about you know, for New York City is extreme heat. Right now, heat is currently the leading cause of climate change related deaths in the U.S. And if you're wondering how many deaths, each year extreme heat you know, contributes to about 12,000 deaths in the U.S. I think that's a striking number that a lot of people aren't aware of. Each year between 2010 and 2020, that was more than any other extreme weather event. Extreme heat. A lot of people don't, I think, give that enough attention. By 2100, so less than 80 years, you know, maybe, you know, your children, grandchildren are going to be, you know, living this. The annual toll could be as high as 97,000 deaths.
You know, one thing that you didn't mention, you talked about old people, young people, but Mayor Adams is talking about homeless people as well.
Absolutely.
And they are dying because they have nowhere to cool down.
Yeah.
And they have these cooling centers, but, you know, do they go there? I don't know. And that's
Or
probably
are
a
they
big
getting
number
the
too.
information
Absolutely.
to know where
Excellent
they
point.
are?
Another vulnerable population.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
There are a few homeless people in Pelham Bay Park. I mean, we all see them begging and, you know, not soliciting, I'm sorry, but, you know, they're out there and there are tents sometimes, so that's a very vulnerable population.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm also concerned, you know, for those days of extreme heat, the strain that places on the power infrastructure, and everyone's running their ACs, everyone's inside, that exacerbates the risk of power failure.
Yeah.
And if, you know, imagine that there's no power in City Island, where can people go? Does this, you know, community center function as a cooling center? Is there a generator that could power, you know, air conditioning? All of those things are possible, you know, preparedness actions that maybe City Island could get ready for. So this final bullet, extreme temperatures can be linked to at least 17 causes of death, most related to heart trouble and breathing issues, but can also include things like suicide, drowning, and homicide. So there's connections there that I think, you know, the public health, you know, literature and research suggests, you know, go beyond just, you know, heat stroke and those direct correlations. We heard about wildfire, right? So we all experienced that last year. It was last year, I think, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
When the smoke from you know, Canada came down. A wildfire, as something most of us know, it's a very serious concern for the western part of the country. The number of wildfires, the scope of wildfires has been increasing. It's like one wildfire right after another, and absolutely devastating communities. New Jersey actually has relatively frequent wildfires. I think in the past 2 years, there's some outbreaks of wildfires there. And I think, you know, for this area, you know, particularly, you know, we saw it firsthand. And what does that mean? Are there going to be more wildfires in Canada? Or would we be ready to deal with those impacts? Is there anything that we can do to prepare? Probably, but likely something that we should be ready for. So that's what I wanted to talk about a little bit for the science and the correlation between disasters. I think that there's a lot of things that suggests we could consider improving and preparing for. It also suggests how we could advocate for infrastructure funding and planning here in City Island. You know, I wonder what all of you think City Island may look like in 2080 or in 2100. Not that far away, really not that far away. And the decisions that I think, you know, community leaders like all of you make is going to impact the livelihood of the future generations here in City Island. And I think by learning a little bit about the science, by looking at some of the projected impacts, which we'll talk about later on tonight, it might motivate action to be taken. And in my experience, it's those community advocates, you know, working with local government, working to prioritize different types of infrastructure projects, and championing them. That's what really helps get things done. And I hope that tonight is the start of that conversation. Maybe in the future, we can have additional workshops. There can be you know, plans developed, maybe a climate change type of plan for City Island that helps focus energy and infrastructure investment so that in 2100, the people that live here don't experience some of the disaster impacts that we just discussed. So I'm gonna pass it to Kat a little bit to talk about public health, but John, I'll also share this PowerPoint with you.
Great.
And
we'll put it on our website.
Yeah.
Thank you.
There's a lot of really great websites that are out there. FEMA has our own climate resilience website. Climate.gov is also an excellent page. The city, furthermore, has some good data sets that you can interact with. These are all links that you can navigate to. There's different like mapping viewers where the New York City Mayor's Office of Climate and Environmental Justice can allow you to interact with some of the projected flooding that's going to happen, or not that's going to happen, but the future floodplains and what those look like in City Island. You can experience and interact with that data. DOHMH also has an interactive heat vulnerability index map. There's extreme rainfall data, chronic tidal flooding, all these different mapping viewers and data that are available from the city to help increase climate literacy for New Yorkers. So I would encourage you, if you want to explore this a little bit more, to check those out. But towards the end of tonight, we'll take a look at some of the maps that we've looked at and also engage in a discussion about, all right, this is great, what are we going to do about it? But before we do that, I'm going to invite Kat to talk a little bit about the public health impacts of climate change too.
Thanks, Race.
Cool.
Thanks for the presentation.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. My name is Kat. It's very nice to be here. I'm going to love this presentation. I'm just going to hone in more on the New York City, what's going on in terms of health. So let me know if you have any questions. But before I start, I would love for everyone to close their eyes. So I think one would call this a land acknowledgement, but I'm just going to ask for permission from the Lenape as a fellow Native American woman to teach from the Andean perspective, because there's a lot of intersections between climate change and health and just community. And so I'm just gonna ask for permission to do it. So everyone touch your forehead. Breathe in, then breathe out. So think good thoughts. And you're gonna touch your heart. Breathe in, then breathe out. Feel good. Then you're gonna touch your stomach, where life starts. You're gonna breathe in, then you're gonna breathe out. Do good. Okay, we can open our eyes. Thank you. Sometimes I have to do that when I hear information. I need to ground myself back because it gets intense. But before I start, has anyone ever heard about Pachamama? Ever? Yes, please tell me what you've heard.
Well, I spent a little time in Bolivia, so
Perfect.
I know that Pachamama is the earth goddess.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you. Anyone else? Great. So, yes?
Glad there's seals here.
So
That was good. I don't think anyone else would have known that. So.
Yeah.
Can you pronounce that again?
Totally. Pachamama.
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 Mm-hmm.
That's his mother in Italian.
Yeah, so
Pacha, not bacha.
Pacha.
Pacha with a P.
The acoustics are bad here, so that's.
Yeah, Pacha.
Gotcha.
I'm just,
Let's go louder. Yeah, so true, Mother Earth. Pacha's the earth part, Mama mom. But there's a little bit more to the story. Essentially what it means is to live well. And what does that mean to live well? It means are you okay inside? Are you okay with your neighbors? Are you okay with your family? Are you okay with your community? But then are you also okay with nature, with wind, with earth, with water? It's all very interconnected. And I have to bring that up. Everyone got a presentation because this is published by, I believe, the CDC, Science of the Total Environment. That's what they're talking about now. This is Pachamama, in my opinion, but this is an opinion. So we have here environmental health. It does intersect with human health, and it intersects with animal health. And where do we see that? When we breathe in, we take in oxygen. When we breathe out, there's carbon dioxide. And then that's what the trees need to survive. So that right there is balance. So that's why I want to bring that up, because whenever you hear these conversations, sometimes it's left out of the equation. And so with that, I think Race touched upon this really well. Right here we have a visualization of the impact of climate change on health. And so what Race discussed here is the center circle. So that would be rising temperatures, more extreme weather, sea level rising, and then increasing CO2 levels, right? So when you go out and out, what does that consequently turn into? Air pollution, severe weather, extreme heat, everything race is touching upon, increasing allergens. There was a map where you showed, which one was it? I think it was extreme heat, I believe, I could be wrong. That's gonna increase the cases of Lyme disease as well. So that's another thing to consider. Also, it will affect water and food supply impacts. But then there's more impacts, which is the outer right here. And so you're gonna have more cases of asthma, cardiovascular disease, heart-related illness, cholera, malnutrition, also respiratory allergens and asthma. That's all very interrelated, which is why I'm happy to be here and talk about it. So I have this workshop. I do it a lot in Queens, so this is kind of like a mix of Kingsbridge and the Bronx and some elements of Roosevelt and Queens, so I brought it like a little bit together just to talk about air pollution, air quality, but also extreme heat. We're gonna talk about flooding, and then I'll share another climate health data tool for Race to add to the presentation.
There we go.
So, let's see, next page. All right, let's start with air quality. This is where I need my notes. All right. Let's start it this way. So air pollution is contamination, and it's basically like, imagine tiny dots, like with your pencil, but probably even smaller, honestly. Just imagine that. And these particles, what happens is that they enter the pores of your skin. And so with that, it's gonna enter your skin, and then I'll talk about like the health impacts with the body in a bit. But for now, I'm just gonna talk about what's going on in the street level, because it's a global topic, so it's good to talk about it in a local way. And so air pollution is contamination through these tiny particles, and it goes directly into the atmosphere from human activity, such as cooking, burning candles, incense, any type of smoke. And what happens is that it combines and it makes reactions into the air. And so, in New York City, the contaminants that contribute to air pollution the most are, does anyone want to guess?
Construction.
Yes, because you have the presentation. Nice.
I did skim it a little. I dropped it, so I had to put it all back together on one of them. So you're not wrong.
Thanks, John.
Yeah, no worries.
Nice. So let's put it up here.
Yeah.
I mean, I know it's particles, but like, you know.
Yeah.
You get what I mean. So construction, so we have the dust, the particles from the chemicals, using the cement, the paint, what else? Like, yeah, it gets in, and then it might go into someone's apartment window, might go into the street, might go into your car, who knows, right? And then, so we have it illustrated here in the color purple for now. Then the second contributor to air pollution, John.
Cars.
Cars. Let's make that black.
Got it.
Correct. Cars, transportation, really, that's reliant on fossil fuels. And so it accumulates with traffic congestion, so it's going to be illustrated with black for now. Then the third is the energy that comes from the buildings, which Race touched upon very quickly in his presentation. So we're going to add it here. I mean, it looks like a party, but we don't want that. But yeah, this is just illustrating how it all comes together and it accumulates and it gets gross. So with that though, weather conditions can worsen air quality. And so the lack of rain, for instance, and wind as well, it causes accumulation. And, Race also mentioned this, there are factors that occur outside of the city that can also contribute to poor air quality. So for instance, the wind coming in from Canada that happened on June 6th of last year, that can also affect your health as well. And so, yeah, this is pretty scary. So we're going to talk about what happens in your body, what's going on there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hand out different organ names, and then I have drawings of the organs, and so when I pull it out of the bag, you're gonna read it out loud, and you're gonna add it to this board. So,
There you go.
Okay, so there they are. Let's see what we got here. All right, who has lungs?
Oh, no.
Lungs. The lungs. Lung disease, asthma, lung cancer, pneumonia.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
So yes, in case people didn't hear, because I am very loud, lung disease, asthma, the development of lung cancer, and pneumonia. It's true.
So that's all connected to climate change and pollution? Okay.
Yes, so I will point out, if you, how do I explain this? If you have these conditions, it's going to get worse. Mm. So you're going to be triggered by the outdoor climate. If you have a healthy lifestyle, if you're seeing the doctor regularly, if you have an asthma management plan, you should be able to be more resilient to outdoor triggers. So this is just like, it'll get worse. It doesn't necessarily directly cause it, but it's still scary. So, who has the reproductive system?
Wow, over here.
There we go.
Premature birth, low birth weight, decreased sperm quality, illness during pregnancy.
Thank you. This one's still being studied by my colleagues, but I still think it's important to talk about. Thank you so much. I'll put it up here. Double down, premature death, low birth weight, decreased sperm quality, and illness during pregnancy. I think we have 3 more. I could be wrong though. Who has the liver?
Yes. Okay. Insulin resistance and diabetes.
Thank you. So again, if you have diabetes, it will get worse or triggered by air pollution. That's what happens. Doesn't necessarily cause it because of it affects your inflammatory system. What else? If we have the heart.
Heart disease and high blood pressure.
I think there's 2. Yeah, thank you. Ooh, it's getting crowded. Let's put it up here. Stick it up. And who has the brain?
Mental health, stroke, brain development, dementia.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Put it here.
I had a question from the back.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Can you speak a little bit more about what could cause the brain to be affected, how the climate, will trigger those symptoms that you were talking about?
Yeah. So, from my understanding, it's because of the it's because of blood flow and blood flow circulation. Okay. Yeah, that's what's going on there. It's also because of inflammation as well. So it doesn't directly cause, it just will get worse if you have these conditions, which is why it's important to drink water, exercise, check in with your doctor, eat whole foods, and especially ones that are anti-inflammatory. But if you'd like, I can ask for more information from the doctor on my staff. Yeah, that's my...
So hydration is for all of it, because climate change most directly with the heat.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the one straight line I can draw.
Exactly. You're on it. Yeah, we're going to talk about that. Yes, thank you. But yeah, no, this is overall what's going on inside. And I'm going to leave it up here to take pictures, mental pictures, so that way you can always remember and carry with you. And I have to also point out the breathing exercise we did was those 3 areas. So if you always want to remember, just remember that crazy girl that made you breathe in and out. So, With that, I think before I get into the next phase of like prevention, has anyone ever seen the air quality index?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. I will go over it. I apologize that it's in Spanish. I normally do this workshop in Spanish, so I think the English.
It's on the
there,
presentation.
Right? Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent. So, to always remember, green, you're clean. You can go outside, everything's good. Red, you're dead. That's extreme, but just so you remember, because it rhymes. So, okay. Green essentially means, again, clean. So everything's okay, there's enough wind circulation, you're by the coast, everything should be all right. It's breaking up these contaminants, like it's safe to go outside. Yellow, it's fine, but if you have any of these conditions listed, just like be on guard, and if it makes you feel more comfortable, definitely wear a mask to be more protected. When it gets into like the orange, more darker colors, that's when you should take more caution. So the wildfire event that took place, that was here. Like you don't want to go outside. And this is, if it helps, this is not official advice. So maybe cover the camera.
Okay.
kidding.
An anonymous person voiced.
An anonymous person.
There we go.
So if you ever need like a short-term solution for if you're having tightness or if you're wheezing or, I recommend thyme, because what you do is you'll boil some water, you put it into a bowl, you like kind of inhale the fumes, put a towel over your head so you can really get that essence. Thyme is a native trick to help like alleviate those symptoms. It's not a long-term solution, but thyme, so with the T. Yeah. But aside from that, I think that's why they always recommend like filters if you are air purifiers, if you're able to invest in one. And I believe, I could be wrong, Race, we might have to check on this, but they do give out masks to cover, your nose and everything during like emergency situations like this. So that's a bit about the AQI and air quality. Does anyone have any questions? I know this is a lot of information. If not, I'll keep going ahead. So, with that, let's talk about extreme heat. I mean, I know Race talked about it with the really high level information, but in terms of what happens to your health with our friend here. So, I have to point out, great info, but heat stroke and heat exhaustion can happen when there's not a declared heat wave, and that's when a lot of the illnesses take place. And that's because, again, what's happening is that the heat is trapped in the asphalt, or dark, I guess I can use this drawing, but it's not dark. We can use the asphalt here. The buildings potentially could trap heat, and so then it feels like 10 degrees warmer than what's really happening. It feels like a problem. And so, even during the nighttime, I have to point that out, you can also get heat exhaustion and heat illness. And so with climate change, extreme heat, it's gonna last longer and it's gonna be stronger. And so as a result, this lack of wind and humidity, it's gonna worsen air quality since the pollutants from construction, transportation, it's gonna get stuck. Like just imagine this image. And so when a heat advisory is issued, what that means it's gonna be 90 degrees or higher for at least 2 days. Cooling centers are activated in the community, which could be a park, a library, shopping center, community center, to help people cool off. And I think for here it's Ambrosini Park, if I'm not mistaken. So, but what else happens is that heat and humidity can cause heat illness and actually even death if you're not careful. And so what's going on in your body here is that your body can't keep itself cool. And so since we talked about vulnerable groups, children are also vulnerable. So if you have grandkids or kids, their body can heat up 3 to 4 times faster because it's harder for them to like get rid of that energy, energy and heat. So And also like they don't have this self-awareness to like check and see how they're feeling. And so if you're a teacher, a coach, a provider, or any sort of like supervisor in their life, just make sure that they're drinking water, especially if they have asthma or any of these conditions, it's gonna be worsen. And older adults, I think what's going on is that it's an issue with body regulation in terms of sweat. And so that's why, going back to the original question, it can worsen chronic health conditions such as high blood pressure, diabetes, obesity, asthma, even anxiety or irritability that can also happen. And so just to grab an example, if you have spinal cord issues, it's going to be difficult to sweat. So, and like other health conditions like high blood pressure, cardiovascular disease, nervous system, or diabetes, the heat is gonna affect your sweating. So it's gonna affect your body's ability to cool off inside because these conditions, the body temperature is damaged, you know, it's a condition. But another condition to mention is if you're overweight, for instance, what's happening is your body surface mass is low. And so again, it's gonna affect your body to sweat and release that heat to keep itself cool. So that's why in a situation where it's like abnormally hot, it's important to like cool off any way you can. And I'll give those tips in a second. So, to be conscious and prevent heat stroke and heat illness, I think, let me just slide this in. I like this image because it breaks it down very well. There's a difference between heat exhaustion versus heat stroke. And so if you're heat exhausted, it's because you're faint or you're dizzy. If it's a stroke, it's gonna be a more throbbing, intense headache. And versus, in terms of sweating, because we talk about sweat a lot, when it's exhaustion, it means it's excessive, but then if it's a heat stroke, because of the conditions we mentioned, there's gonna be no sweating. So that's why it gets dangerous. But also, with the no sweating, how to like extra check is because your body temperature is usually above 103 degrees. And so you're gonna get more like red, hot, dry skin. You're gonna start having nausea, vomiting, rapid, strong pulse. You may lose consciousness. Those are very serious. And when that happens, you have to call 911, just straight up. And take action to cool up the person. So like if you're having an event, for instance, make sure you have some like cold towels or some sort of shade, anything to help the person cool off until 911 comes. Versus heat exhaustion, you're gonna have nausea, vomiting as well, but I think the difference is that it's the cramps that takes place. And so again, you don't necessarily need to call 911 unless these symptoms appear, but you need to get cool off. Like go to an AC place, drink water until you're fully conscious. And also, it could also help to have like a cool compress, anything. You know, that is how to tell and differentiate between the two. And so, yeah, I think other preventative measures you could take is, they say, and Race mentioned about the energy systems, keep it at 78 degrees Fahrenheit or low cool. Save money on electricity bills and conserve energy, but also for power outage issues. Stay hydrated throughout the day, especially if you have any of these conditions, and especially if you're sweating a lot. You could also wear loose-fitting, light-colored clothes to like deflect like the sun's rays. And also, smoking or drinking excessively will exacerbate these conditions to heat exhaustion and heat stroke. So ideally, because I have to take my own advice, avoid soda or coffee because that caffeine, it's gonna make your heart work extra hard. And so that's what's happening. And it's gonna be like more likely during extreme heat to have further issues. Let me see. Yeah, again, you can call 311 to locate the closest cooling center to you. There's also, if you know someone who doesn't have air conditioning, there's the HEAT program, so the Home Energy Assistance Cooling Assistance Program. And it assists homeowners and renters with paying the cooling bills. So you can check if you're eligible and sign up right away. I think it's opening actually April 15th, and what happens is the funding runs out. So if you do know someone who doesn't have an AC, they're very at risk of, you know, heat stroke and whatnot, sign up right away before that funding runs out. So that's my unofficial advice. Go do it. Other measures you can take to look out for each other as a community is if you know someone who doesn't have AC, if you see someone who's just at risk, you know, just check if they have like a friend, a family member with AC for them to cool off. And also there's cross ventilation tips that you can do. Like I know probably, I think I saw in Great Gatsby actually, they used to put ice cubes in front of a fan to like blow cool wind. I mean, like not a long-term solution, but like if you're in a bad situation, there's always that. Or cross ventilation as well. You can also use dark fans, or excuse me, curtains to keep the sunlight out. That's another trick that you can do in your house. Yeah, and if you're planning a community event, again, think about the shading, think about bringing misting tents. They are available at a reasonable price and like a good investment, I think. You can also think about bringing extra water. There's a program where you can call in for a big water tank to come through to make sure that everyone's staying hydrated. So, and having cool towels available. So there are some tricks to keep your community safe to think about when planning. And yes, before I get into flooding, is there any questions? Because I know I'm running through a lot.
Just some of the programs, if you could email me what the programs are, we can promote them with our social media. Like the HEAP thing, I definitely want to get that out as soon as possible so that people who are at risk, you know, we can at least make sure they know.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else? All right, all right. So the last topic I'll talk about, health-wise, not too long, these were the big ones, is flooding. So as Race mentioned, and as these maps demonstrate, it's gonna get wild. So we're gonna have an increase in flooding and rainfall events, and it scares me that they're cutting down the trees because that is like protection to the community. That's not good. And with climate change, increase in temperature, but also increase in seasonal allergies, again, Lyme disease, and also rats. Rats will stay out longer because it's warmer out. What's holding them back, right? Yeah, that's another thing that's gonna take place. And also, I mean, I guess I could add it here. People pollute. You know, like people just throw trash on the street and like you have leaves, you have runoff. It gets so gross.
Like, why they're chopping the trees down? Are they just cleaning out the dead ones, or?
Yeah, do you know why?
We have Nancy.
So,
we need Nancy.
No, she's emailed me a few times. So the reason is that they are trying to build some sort of station closer to Orchard Beach itself. And this is like, they chopped down a bunch of the trees and they're putting in like a station there. It's like a building. So again, I'm not defending it. I'm just explaining what they're doing. Right. So they're building a building. They've got to put a parking area next to said building. So they chopped down like 60 trees. Okay. And obviously that's been a big concern to, yeah, of course, you know, big concern to a lot of the, what we did is,
no public hearing.
I think they're claiming it's part of the Orchard Beach reconstruction. I'm not defending that. I'm just saying that's what they're saying. So what we did is we did let New Yorkers for Parks know. And I'm actually following up with them just to make sure everything was done on the up and up. And they're an independent advocacy organization for more funding for parks. So if they take it up, great. But otherwise, it would fall on people to initiate legal action. And, you know, I don't know if that could be done. So.
Thanks, John.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah, no, it worries me because that's what breaks up the storm wind.
Oh, totally. No, yeah. And we're fortunate, you know, we're surrounded by Pelham Bay Park when you leave here. And everyone here walks through there, either for leisure or with their dogs or to bike ride, and it's a nice amenity, and we've got to protect that.
True. Yes.
The rain gardens.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. I'll tell you yes. They don't take care of it.
That's true too.
And they become dumping grounds. You know, garbage, and people just feel free to. You know, we have a nice little community over there. Yeah. It's private over by the gardens, and yet people just. We don't know, you know, trying to catch them on the camera just so I can maybe dump garbage in their garden. But that's happening a lot. And this is, the idea is beautiful. I have it in front of my house. And it's great, but the city doesn't doesn't take care of it. So
and they don't do an education program to let people know what it is and why and everything.
I see the guys come in every once in a while, they have their own hoses and they come in and they water the garden. But they let it go for months. You know.
Maintenance is a critical issue. You're 100% right.
If you're not going to take care of it, you know, then pull it out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good point.
Very good point.
Yeah.
Also, kind of backtracking, but like you can also hose the sidewalk, and that'll help during extreme heat as well. So, just potential community activity. But thank you for mentioning that, because I mean, with maintenance, we can add that to here too. So then when it floods, all of that comes together, like everything, you know. And so the health advice, if you don't already know, so I'm just gonna say it loudly, stay out of the floodwater. And also there could be sharp and dangerous objects if you're walking, so that's why you need to stay out. And if you have a dog, especially make sure it doesn't drink floodwater, because it could have bacteria and pathogens and like the rats. Yeah, you don't want to do that. And if you do happen to come into contact, wash the area with soap and water well. And don't drive in a flood, because the shallow water can cause you to lose control and hydroplane. But also be aware that carbon monoxide poisoning is a risk that happens from using a generator during a power outage. So, and that one scares me because like you can't really smell it. So
silent killer.
Silent killer, indeed. So I need to add a drink, but if you see a clogged catch basin, you can call 311. That is in your ability to do so as a New Yorker. And when leaves and other debris like block a catch basin and like cause all that flooding, yeah, I would say call 311, yes, but like I know communities, yes.
No, on that point, we do still do the Adopt a Block, Adopt a Basin program. I know about 20 people have the brooms, have the shovels, have the gloves, have the trash pickers. So if you're interested in that, you can go right to our website or email me, and I'll send you the form for Adopt a Basin. We drop the tools at your home. You get hedge clippers, and then we have 3 motorized, like lawn mower type things, portable lawn mowers. But obviously we can't give them to everyone, but if there's a job where you need them, we can lease them out to, give them to you for what you're looking to do. So we do offer those things. Great. And we do have people who I live near a few catch basins. So if I know it's going to be bad, we go out there and we just sweep it, and I do have to say a lot of the store owners are very good with it too. But Phil, who lives on Miniford, he's big into the program. And we have Bella, who lives, I think, on Cross Street. She's out there a few days a week. So, if you need those things, you can just speak to me afterwards. But we do the Adopt a Basin program, and we do that through a grant that the Home Depot gave us. Thank you.
That's an incredible program. Like I think a lot of people dismiss how significant.
Of course.
Keeping those storm drains clean. Yeah. Just cleaning out the debris. Yeah. That can save an entire block. So that's an incredible program. I just want to look that up.
Oh, thank you.
Yes. Nice. And yes. So we can just take that off here since you have this program. Bye.
We need more people. You build to scale, but people should still call 311 to report catch basins. 311 is a good tool, and a lot of it's web form now. So I know for a while people would get on the phone with a 311 operator, and they work hard. I'm not trying to disparage a civil servant here, but they're not always familiar, and there are barriers in talking about things and context and language and whatnot. But this way you can go right online, usually find the online form, put in the catch basin. So there's a lot of different things for that.
So we have 2 very great solutions here. Yeah. I mean, I love the community cleanup. I say rock on, let's keep on with that. And I will say that the reason I have to promote, I hate the word promote, but call into 311 is because that's data that's being collected to justify more resources to City Island. So that's why I'm
100%.
Call 311, do it.
Absolutely.
Yes, I'm done.
I just wanted to think about what you said, that when you have 4 or more 311 calls to a particular location, it's considered a cluster, and that bumps up the incident so that it can get taken care of more expeditiously. So please keep that in mind. Anytime you have something going on in your community, potholes or whatever, the more people who call in, it makes that incident go higher priority.
Love it. Thank you, Amjad.
You're welcome.
Yes. So yeah, there you go. You got two avenues here. And then I'll just leave off with flooding. That mold can grow into your house. So that could be an issue of circulation, or, I mean, it depends on your building, but that can cause respiratory problems or worsen asthma that you see up here. So if you're a renter, if you're a landlord, must address mold conditions and moisture problems. And if you feel this repair work isn't happening or being done fast enough, you can also call 311 for that. Just be aware. And also, it is normal to feel anxious, depressed, or have mental health literally flood your mind after a flooding event. That is normal. So, seek support where you have support, and just be, just know that it's normal. And So, yeah, I think I will end. If you don't already have it, definitely download Notify NYC, because I don't know, I guess you could argue, what is the first step to prepare and respond and all that? It's just being aware of what's going on, being informed. And so, especially if you have any of these conditions, download it right now. Because then after this presentation that it could worsen your health. So I will say, definitely do that. And I'll just leave off with the scary stuff for now. So I'm just gonna point out what are some solutions we could advocate, more solutions we can advocate at City Island Rising. Solar energy. Captures the sun's rays, it's clean, it's resilient, so we can put it there. That way if there's a power outage, you're still gonna have energy. You can take off that.
Are there grants that the city is considering right now to put solar on buildings that we could apply for as a community?
I'm not sure about the city, but I do know Con Ed has a 1 million or 3 million grant specifically for community groups. Okay. So I would look into that. It's the Climate Resiliency Grant through Con Ed.
What was the name of it?
Climate Resiliency Grant through Con Ed.
All right.
Yep.
I'll look into it. Thank you.
You're welcome. And then what else? Got some wind energy, right? That's another one we need. For the same exact reasons, actually. It's just cleaner. Oh, I'm not sticking. It doesn't want to work. I'll just put it there. That's not realistic, but it's all good. So I'm going to take off that. I'll take out the particulate matter, that gross stuff. Then the last one that's so important that I heard throughout the night that I can't empathize more. Green space advocacy, right? It has, I can't stress this enough, so many health benefits, like stormwater management. If you replace the soil frequently, you have good drainage, it just looks beautiful. It helps with mental health. Just seeing trees, you just feel happier. It's almost magic. But then also during extreme heat, you get shading. And if you get enough trees, you'll break it up. Get rid of that. So I'll leave there. That's really all I have to say. Do you have any more questions?
I had one question.
Yes.
For years I've been hearing about El Nino. And I never understood El Nino. I figured El Nino was a flash in the pan. But El Nino every so often comes up. Where does El Nino emanate from, and where does it wind up, and where does it end in terms of weather forecasting?
I just know El Nino, I could be wrong, but I think that's more Pacific Ocean.
It is.
Right?
When I made the mistake of saying El Nino a minute ago, it wasn't a mistake. It's the counterpart to what happens on the east and west coast. And what's the Gulf?
The Gulf
Stream.
The Gulf Stream, and El Nino in the Pacific, and the Gulf Stream on our side, the Atlantic.
No problem. And
nobody could remember Gulf Stream.
I'm so happy you asked that, because El Nino affects everything we talk about.
Remember the term.
Oh, yeah.
We only remember El Nino.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what.
La Nina too. You don't want to mess with La Nina.
No, exactly.
No, both of them, they will exacerbate drought, exacerbate flooding, all of the events that Race mentioned. So yeah, again, keep the presentation if you need it. You can always reference it. If you want to do a presentation, you can use mine. Please go ahead. And I added the air quality index and this in Spanish just in case. So yeah, thank you for your time, your attention, and I'm happy that you all are doing this.
Great. I think it's so nice to have like the public health, implications of climate change to complement the, larger disasters that I was talking about. But I'm really curious. We talked about a lot about extreme heat. We talked about hurricanes, precipitation, and I don't know if any of you have had a chance to look at the maps that I printed out, but there was a climate change report that the city did, and I printed out 5 different forecasts of what the floodplain is projected to look like here in City Island. So you can kind of look at them in chronological order. There's one from like 2015, 2020s, 2050s, 2080s, all the way up to 2100. So go ahead and look at that, and you should be able to see the cross streets, and this is what the projected floodplains are going to look
City
like.
Island will be City Islands if one goes, because there'll be 2 different pieces.
Wow. I didn't realize we had.
Part Island will be almost gone.
Wow. In case you're around in 2080.
The breakthrough of modern technology.
You never know.
People,
That's right.
Might start cryogenically freezing people.
Yeah. But I know Alex will be on his island.
That's right.
What do you guys think about that? Do you see the progression in time? So if you lay them out sort of chronologically, you can see how it changes. Yeah. 2015, where's the 2021?
There it is.
2020. You can put them in order and kind of see how they grow.
Wow.
It's a 2050. 2050 is already starting to.
Oh no, I got that.
Right. Here. Look at them.
This is a future one.
2020, 2050, that's 20.
Yeah, no, but it's crazy.
Nice to see you too.
I was surprised to see like there could be a whole section, sort of 2 isolated
islands.
City Island. Yeah.
Maybe City Islands by the time we get to the.
live in Bolivia.
I didn't live there. I traveled there a few times. I was on the board of an organization that was doing water projects there, up in the Altiplano. It's like 14,000 feet, crazy high up. So I have a little Pachamama figure.
Yeah, sure.
That is cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Crazy.
When we were young, right?
It wasn't that long ago.
It wasn't.
I have a question, and I'm not quite sure
That's not that
how to phrase it.
No.
I worked for
Yeah,
the
I
Red
was on the
Cross
board for a while.
during 9/11.
Okay.
I've never worked for
these
that kind of an
people living up
agency
in the
before. I've always
Altiplano,
been in the
living
business
already
world.
at like
But we needed the
12,000,
business
14,000
world in
feet,
there
depending
too.
on where they are in the Andes.
Do you want, or do you foresee?
And we talked about extreme heat. We talked about flooding. We talked about sea level rise. What are some things, based on what we talked about tonight, do you think City Island Rising can do to prepare for some of the impacts of climate change that we discussed?
I think we've done one thing.
Okay.
The CPR class.
Yeah.
And that's
being
just,
ready to respond. I think that's part of it.
Right. And it doesn't even matter if you know how to do it correctly. 3 years from now, you know about what to do. So in an emergency, you can do it until something comes to help.
I think that's interesting, and like taking that line of thinking and expanding it. So if someone has a heat stroke, what can we do about it? Because the data suggests we're going to have more extreme heat waves. And if people on City Island know how to save someone or help for someone that's having heat exhaustion or heat stroke, that is a connection for climate change. And City Island can help train people and get ready for that. I see that connection there.
I think emergency response is critical and continuing on that. I think we need to broaden the base of the organizations. Like everyone should have a stake in this, particularly Pilot Cove, because there's a very vulnerable population of seniors there. Doesn't mean all seniors are weak, I'm not saying that, but there are people there who are going to need help in a natural disaster, and it's going to fall on us to help them. I think, you definitely want the community center, the scouts, all those groups involved in some sort of response. And I think, building on the work that I know you do, Race, houses of worship, because there's a lot of social services being provided that, outside of the government realm that none of us really know about, because it's done, in confidentiality, through pastors and rabbis and people along that nature. So I think those would be some ways, is to branch out to those other groups and public education. I think the more we can do a public education would be good. The only thing I would point out is just, if there are things we should be doing in terms of resiliency, we talked about solar earlier, and I know we want more green infrastructure as opposed to gray infrastructure, but seawalls might be needed in certain portions of City Island to protect both people and just critical infrastructure. I think those are things we definitely need to focus more on. We've had some conversations with Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez's office, trying to get the utility lines underground, particularly in Pelham Bay Park. There's been a lot of discussion here tonight about how critical the trees are and greenery. And, if there's an electrical fire, like we're putting those natural resources at risk, and putting these things underground is better for providing the utilities, modernizing the utilities, and making them safer for God forbid, and resilient in a storm. So those would be things I think we need to focus on: is emergency response, broadening the outreach, and then again, making sure critical infrastructure is taken care of.
Yeah. What would broadening the outreach look like for City Island Rising?
I think what we need to do is, we need, our first meeting, we got, the head of the Legion was there, the CERT team was there, we had, people from Jacoby Medical Center there, we had 50 people, so, multiples this group, though I appreciate everyone being here. These are the diehards. That's really what we need. We need all the different groups to take a proactive role and realize that in an emergency, particularly if, God forbid, we're not able to leave the island, it's really going to fall on us to, make the best of it and try to make the best of it for everyone else as things go along. Go ahead.
Well, that's what I'm thinking. The ferry is a really good asset to have in place to get us off the island. And I'm constantly going back to the need or ability to have some sort of police station, annex, or whatever you call them, and more of that sort of thing, because if we're cut off, we're cut off. And so I think the ferry that's a good argument for why we get the ferry.
100%. Thank you for that.
I'm curious, do you have a relationship at all with the boat captains on the island?
That's a great question. About the Island Current and those boats.
I actually just texted the Island Current about something today related to the ferry, actually. So
that's a really
the Coast Guard group would be I'm gonna write that. That's another great idea.
So what are you thinking? Like developing an agreement?
That being part of an evacuation.
Exactly.
Establish a relationship with the boat captains and get commitments from them. To assist with evacuation during the time you need. And have them be a part of the COAD.
That's a great idea, John. Thank you.
Really good idea.
John knows what I've been talking to him about, and I think we're on the way to do is an organizational plan for the island, meaning you have definite street captains, you know where the vulnerable people are, you plot out your organizational plan, so your emergency response team goes into action to get, the vulnerable people off the island, and, it becomes, again, organizing with the boat, all of that has to be laid out in an evacuation.
And building on what Lois is saying, which is critical, an organizational chart. We also need to do, and we've spoken about this, community mapping to see where are our vulnerable points and then build on that who's responsible for addressing those things. And I know we've talked about that as well. So a community mapping session, I think, and encouraging all the other groups to co-sponsor it. The Coast Guard was a great suggestion, and the boat captains.
Yes. I mean, we have a few buildings in this town, and some of them is, city government, subsidized as well. So to have them be involved somehow or informed on what we're doing would be very helpful.
Part of that plan, if I may, with the boat captains, okay, remember during 9/11, we had a lot of boats from all over going to Long Manhattan, taking people over to New Jersey, right, at different points.
Right.
But it'd be good to have an understanding where would be the best point to evacuate people to, so that they will be out of, not only out of harm's way, but they can be transported to areas where they can get shelter and remedy and so forth, and not drop them to the destination.
Like to set up cooling centers on the island.
That's what I was thinking.
This could be a cooling
too. I was going to say, right, because the library is a cooling center, but this, we need something bigger than that. This.
We need
And I believe the
equipment center.
With the right equipment.
Didn't mean to cut anyone off. No, those are, and I think the PSS City Island, the senior center is, but as Lucille's saying, it's not open during hours where it might be needed. So she's absolutely right. And maybe if there's a way to make this a cooling center, I totally think that's a wonderful idea.
I think I'm hearing a lot of interesting ideas that could be the start of a climate change, climate adaptation plan for City Island. The other thing that I would encourage you to think about, and I know you already are, but those infrastructure type mitigation projects, and just looking at the floodplain projected maps, that's going to require some serious investment with infrastructure improvements. And I want to talk a little bit about a grant program that FEMA has. Some of you may be aware of this, but if you don't, I really just want to make sure that you're aware of it. FEMA offers a ton of money for communities to reduce their risks to different types of disasters. Okay, one is our BRIC program, BRIC. It stands for Building Resilient Infrastructure in Communities. Last year, Congress appropriated $1 billion for mitigation projects across the country. There's also our Flood Mitigation Assistance Program, which can fund things like infrastructure improvements, stormwater management, flood walls, things that are going to reduce long-term flood risk, okay? How does this work? If you want to explore these grant opportunities, I would encourage you to form a relationship with DEP and ask them to come out and do a study of flooding in City Island. They'll do a hydrological study for you that can then inform what types of projects could reduce that flood risk. What DEP does then is they work with the New York City Emergency Management Office to produce that application for a flood project for City Island. That then goes to the state of New York for review, and if it looks good, they'll send it up to FEMA for review. Follow those steps. Try to have a conversation with DEP and try to get them out here to do that study, and then advocate for a project that you want to see.
They've been here, but you're right. We should. I'm appreciating what you're saying, because this expertise is what we need. We need to bring them out here for this specifically. Okay.
Yeah, and I promise you, local community advocates like you all, if you have a voice and can raise that voice up and form those partnerships, that's the recipe for success with getting major infrastructure investment for communities. So I would encourage you to foster those relationships with DEP, with NYCM, and look into those long-term mitigation projects. You might not see the funding for years, but that kind of thing is going to make a difference for the generations in City Island that are here in 2080, that are here in 2100, which is not that far away. Yeah. And that could be a great legacy for the work that you all do and the work that we do in City Island. So I would encourage you to think long-term. Preparation is great. Those emergency response training is great, but also think a little bit further about ways you can bring that infrastructure funding to City Island. So I think all of that, I'm hearing a lot of great ideas for a climate change plan for City Island. And I hope that tonight is maybe a start of that conversation. And I hope that, over the next, several months and years, maybe we can invite other city agencies here and we can continue to explore and prioritize what you would like to see in City Island.
Thank you. You said NYSNA or NYSERDA?
Oh, NYSIM. I'm sorry.
NYSIM,
it's
okay.
New York City Emergency Management.
Is there a counterpart to this around health? In other words, can we look at City Island and look at, are there particular health issues on one particular area of the island? Lung problems that may be caused by mold, or things like that that are caused by flooding. So I'm just wondering if we have any information like that for a place like City Island, if we could.
Yes, there's the Environment and Health Data Portal. And so if you're planning for an event or community where you want to focus on specific issues, it'll be on that portal.
So what's it called?
It's Environment and Health Data Portal. I can put it in your phone.
Okay.
Write it down.
Yes, I'm sorry.
The other resource is the community health profiles. It's online on the website. The only thing about it is it will show you your district, but not City Island specifically. If you want that, then you can talk to I forgot what department it is. But there's a department that can work with you to get you specific data regarding City Island.
I guess I didn't think.
I also have to point out, that since we have an active group, there is a lot of power in doing more storytelling behind these events too.
Oh yeah.
So it doesn't just have to be numbers. And
Storytelling is
to help with your grant applications.
Yeah.
So,
No, we should definitely
talk
about that.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
So we have a lot to work on and think about, and I have everybody signed in, which I appreciate. And then we do have, this is the third event. So we had the 40 people at the first event, the 50 people at the second event, the roughly 12, 13, 14 of you here tonight. So then we'll go from there, and we'll try to bring everybody back together. I know this is a rough week for people between the two Christmas. Easter and Passover, but we'll try to do something and everything else. We'll try to do something in the next month or two to try to build on this. So everyone stay active, and we'll go from there.
Thank you all so much. There's some literature on the